Everybody, I'd like to introduce to you Primož Kovačić, who's from Slovenia, and he's an expert in information technology in Africa, especially in Kenya. So Primož, Kenya is a country with GDP less than $1,000 per year. Kenya is also really low on the health development index, yet mobile penetration rate is hovering around 70%. What processes made this possible in the past?
Well, like you said, the mobile penetration there is extremely high, and it became like that only in the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look 10 years back, the mobile penetration was about 3%, and in the last 10 years it grew all the way up to 70%.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is just a part of the information revolution that is happening all over the globe. At the same time, internet penetration in Kenya grew from almost zero a decade ago, up to 30%. So yeah, it's just a global phenomenon, I think.
The GDP is less than $1,000. How can they afford these?
Well, so in the last couple of years, Kenya was one of the first countries which got connected to the broadband, undersea broadband internet cable. And the prices for internet and prices for mobile services are extremely low. I think the companies are trying to penetrate the big market, African market, and that's why they're keeping the prices low, so they get more subscribers. So for example, if you're in Kenya, calling to the US or UK or India or China is extremely cheap. You can buy a phone for $10, for example. You can buy an Android phone for $50. So there's a special market which is made for bottom of the pyramid, so-called bottom of the pyramid. And they just flooded the whole continent with mobile phones, and they're doing the same with internet.
And in the case of your company, what does it make possible for you to do?
Build technology solutions for better governance. Within the country of Kenya, there is a lot of areas which are very poorly governed. So the government institutions are poor. The government doesn't necessarily have presence in the whole region or the whole country. So it's up to the people sometimes to decide, how they govern themselves. So let's say in Nairobi, you have huge slums. Half of the population of Nairobi's 3 million people live in informal settlements where there's almost no government presence. When I went to Kenya in 2009, we trained local, mostly youths, young people in, GPS, OpenStreetMap, and some of these available platforms which were out there. And they basically went out and they mapped the slums. So our first goal was to put these areas, which are so-called invisible, on the maps and make them visible to the outside world. So we mapped roads, we mapped schools, we mapped hospitals, we mapped water points, churches, anything that is publicly available.
What do you want to achieve with this?
First of all, if you want to talk about development of a certain area, and the slums definitely need development, you need to know what's there. You need to know how many hospitals there are, how they're equipped, how many patients there are per day. There's no central database which you can access to see how many schools there are in an area of 300,000 people, which according to the government doesn't even exist. So that's the first step, figuring out what's there, right? And then how to connect it with? Yeah, exactly. And when we started our company, our goal was to give people tools to express, their needs, and then connect these needs to the people within community or outside of the community who can do something about it. So let's say there's lack of water in a particular area. So people are able to report on this lack of water, and they're able to express their wish to have a new water point or one or two. And that what our company does, or what our system does, is it finds a matching partner to solve this particular problem. So let's say if they need a water point, it finds people within the community who can build a water tower. Maybe they have the skills to build wells, or there's organizations within these communities who build wells or do something about, you know, water issues. We connect citizens directly to someone who can provide a service.
The mapping, the data collection. What monetary challenges did you face so far?
Actually, it's not that expensive. No? Considering that most of these tools, especially with the whole open source movement, are free. So all you need to have basically is internet, which is available, you know, all over the country. So you have mobile internet, is how most people access the internet. But then you have cyber cafes, even in the slums. You have wireless all across Nairobi, for example, and you can access internet even in the most remote areas of Kenya through your mobile phones. So you know, cheap prices for mobile and cheap prices for internet, and then open source technologies, sometimes freely available satellite imagery, GPS units which cost less than $100. So it doesn't really cost that much to create an impact.
And how do you want to involve people who are not that adept in technologies?
Throughout the years that I've been doing this work, you realize that a lot of these tools are built for anyone to, you know, to be able to learn. So they're not complicated. So I've trained people who've never seen a computer into how to make a map, you know, or you know, you train someone how to use a mobile phone as a tool for governance, for example. So the tool needs to be simple, and most of these tools are simple, actually. If we talk about OpenStreetMap, and everybody can learn how to use it, and everybody can become a geographer, you know, within a day. Usually the way we do training is we just give the tools out immediately, and we spend 10 minutes explaining what a GPS does, and then we just send them out in the field and let them figure it out for themselves, and usually people learn within a day.
Where did this whole idea come from?
There's been a movement for quite some time now. I mean, OpenStreetMap, it's been around for almost a decade now, a little bit less. But I think it started with, you know, the invention of the internet and mobile phones, and then these tools becoming, how you say, ubiquitous. I think that's the word. So everybody has them now. They're cheap. Everybody knows how to use them. And now, you know, people use them I usually say million people have million ideas, you know, and they find out million ways to use them.
So are there a lot of companies like yours in the developing world in Kenya, or yours is a really different?
No, there's a lot of technology companies, because information communication technology for development is this field which is quite big now, and it's adopted by all the biggest international organizations and countries. And Nairobi is a technology hub in Africa. It's really developed. It has hundreds of technology companies there. It's almost like a Silicon Valley of Africa. So I would say there's many companies doing similar things, some more successful than others, of course.
And what's the future for Kenya, for this developing communities? Do you think that, how will it change their lives in the future?
Well, I mean, you know, these tools are going to become even more accessible, because Kenya is still sort of lacking behind the developed world. It's still, mobile penetration is 70%. It's still not 100%. So some areas are still not connected, for example. Then internet is still nowhere near the developed world, but you know, it's coming. So I see, you know, people being more and more educated and connected to the outside world, you know, with every year that it passes. So Kenya and all the African countries, because you have to understand that a lot of African countries are not as advanced as Kenya in these technologies. They're still lacking behind. But I see the whole continent slowly opening up to the world, and people having access to information people being empowered by information, and hopefully that will lead to better development, better governance, better governments, and so on.